watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. Welcome everybody that's online. How are you guys doing this morning? I know why you're excited, because it is not raining like it was for the people that were scrambling into 8:30 service. Watching them come in, it was like they were being assaulted. Everyone in the room, like, all their faces running, just people dragging children across the parking lot. Like, come on, we can make it. And so just enjoy, because then apparently it's gonna like freeze and snow. Who knows? It's Virginia. But I'm thankful for you guys being here as we wrap up our series, Purpose, a life with meaning. We started this a couple weeks ago and wanted to start the year off in a way that we could all point together in 2019 and go like, all right, this jumping off point, you're going to make a bunch of, New Year's resolutions. You're going to make all the promises in the world. Statistics show that most of us will abandon almost all of them by mid-month. And here we are in week 3 of January. And so you've kissed most of those goals goodbye already. And so what do we do now? And I know that this series has been impacting people because of the text messages, emails, phone calls, and here are just a few of them. One of the guys texted me and said, hey, I thought going into this series that my purpose was to be just a decent father. But now I realize, as we were messaging back and forth, he said, now I realize that my purpose is to be about God first. And these other things will begin to fall into place. A couple other people said, I thought my purpose was to be good at my job, which that actually is good at first, but could actually be really sad, because what happens if in a job that you work in, say you work in construction and you get hurt, and then you no longer can be good at your job. You can no longer do the things that you did before. The purpose that you once had under that umbrella could be really impacted. And so as me and this individual were talking, they're like, yeah, I'm in the military, and eventually, I'm going to be out of the military. And so if my purpose was just simply about my job, then I don't know that that's really what my life should be about, and I'm learning that as we go. Two of the things that really hit me heavy, one person message said, I thought going into this that my purpose with God was to just not be bad. And another person who's going through a very difficult time said, I thought that my purpose was just to simply be strong for those people around me. And as we started talking in each of those instances, man, God wants way more for us than just simply the goal of not being bad. And when it comes to being strong and the things that are going on in our life, God wants us to rely on Him and to allow Him to be the one who gives us strength. Because somebody along the way probably lied to you at some point and said, God won't give you anything more than you can handle. And quite honestly, that's not true. God has said throughout the Bible and throughout time that He will give us more. There will be moments where it's bigger than we can handle to point us to Him. And the way we started off this series is the way that I hope that we can end it. We looked at this excerpt from Jerry Bridges' Pursuit of Holiness, and it's a prayer that he prays yearly. And I'd love it if you feel comfortable with it to repeat this with me as kind of our 2019, honestly, our call, our resolution. And it starts this way, and if you want to, you can join in with me. Lord, I am willing to receive what you give, to lack what you withhold, to relinquish what you take, to suffer what you inflict, and to be what you require. Those are difficult words to say. Let's be honest. If we're allowed to be honest anywhere, it should be within connection to this community and the local church. And honestly, to relinquish what you take. God, if there's going to be things that are removed from my life, I am going to let go of them. How many times do we like to hoard certain things and keep it all together? And somebody's like, you should probably get rid of that. And you're like, from my cold, dead kung fu grip hands. Like, you're like, no, I'm not going to let go of that. What if there's things that you and I need to let go of? You know, to suffer what you inflict. That God, there's going to be moments that life is difficult. There's going to be moments where life is hard. And God, you're going to allow some moments in my life. It's going to refine me. No one has ever grown from good times. Every time that you've watched somebody grow, it's why we love sharing those stories on social media. There's moments where someone had something that happened and they overcame them. And it was through that struggle that they grew, they moved in their art, in their craft, in life. And we go, man, that is inspiring. And so when we read these words, to suffer what you inflict, that we would be people that say, all right, God, if there's something that enters into my life, that I'm going to accept it and not just go, God, take it away. Go, God, what are you trying to teach me? But above all, to be what you require. That we would be people that would be honest with ourselves and say, you know what, there is a chance that I might not be firmly who I need to be in God. And God, there could be a chance that you made me for more, which is why in week 1 we started off talking about we were made to worship. What is our purpose? Our purpose is to worship God. And last week, as we dug a little bit deeper, Dan did a phenomenal job, our adult ministries pastor, as he talked about the fact that you and I are going to encounter work. And for a lot of us, we just go, I don't want to do any work. I just wish, can someone pay me to sleep? And that would be great. And there's jobs out there that do that. And so good luck. I just don't want to, but that we would work because we're all going to have it. And it's not just necessarily a job, that every task that is presented itself, how do we honor others? How do we move in that in a way that honors God as our act of worship? One of the New Testament writers said that whether we eat or drink or whatever we do it all to the glory of God. And so how would we choose to say everything that I work towards, I'm going to do it in a God-honoring way? But here we are in week 3, and I want to kind of help us along in this endeavor. And to be able to do that, studies show that now the statistic is as high as 86% of us are visual learners, meaning that the small few rest of us are audible learners. And so one of the things that we do a lot around here is we use objects to be able to tell a story. And so here we have a table. Now you might be thinking, all right, where are we going with this? You see, for each and every one of us, we need a baseline, a foundation by which we make decisions. Every one of us has this, whether we have formally acknowledged that or not. You have a baseline by which you build everything that you do. How you work is built upon a foundation of, part of that's your worldview, part of that is the different things that have come together, your life experiences, but all of us have a baseline and a foundation by which we build the way that we treat people, how we look at the world around us, all those things. But it's not just simply that baseline that dictates where we move. It's also the foundation that baseline is built upon. And the only way that any structure stands well is if it's built in such a way that everything is solidified, that it will stand firm and stand strong, and that anything we lay on it will not be shaken. And that foundation will stand firm. And so one of the things that we started off in week 1 is we said, all right, one of these pillars that hold up our purpose, that hold up our identity is worship. That you and I are built to worship God, which is why we asked the question in week 1, who gives you purpose? Not what, because what gives you purpose? You could go, well, it's my job, it's my family, it's this, it's that, it's what my activities, my hobbies, all those. No, not a what, a who. Because instilled in each and every one of us, deep down at our core, is the desire to know, why am I here? What is my purpose? What was I built, designed, and created for? And when we ask that question, who gives you and I purpose? We begin to get and dig down, and here at Forefront Church, we'd say that God is the one that gives us purpose through the movement, life, teachings, and work of Jesus as he redeems us and sets us free, because we all falter and have a hard time making our foundation secure, which is why we need him. And so we start off with that worship piece, but we don't end there. Last week, Dan guided us and directed us into that piece of work. And the question that we would ask in this is, who gets the overflow of your purpose? Because you're going to go to work, you may have a family, you're going to have friendships, you're going to have interaction with other people. Who gets the overflow of how you live out your purpose? How are you treating people? The question that I ask myself is, how diligently do I fulfill the worship that I've been called to? God, if I'm going to worship you, as I interact with others, how am I pointing people back to you? How am I caring for them? How am I loving them? That's why Tommy mentioned how we're, later on today, we're going to serve people that are homeless in our community. Not because we want to make our name known, but because there are people that are down and out and they need help. And who better to help them than people that love them regardless of their circumstance? That we would send people to Mexico to build homes because that matters. That how is my work and all that I do, not just a job, how does it point back in my worship? Which then leads us to this third pillar, because this cannot stand, a two-legged table cannot stand on its own. A foundation would fall if that were the case, which is why we need this third aspect, which is we go from worship to work to week, which would identify with our time. I need another W, so there you go. It would drive all the OCD people crazy if we did work and then we did worship and then we did time. They'd be like, no. So we got week. How do you spend your week? The question that we would ask is who gets the presence? Not like presents like gifts, presence like you actually being there. Who gets the presence of your purpose? Who are the people that you spend time with? How do you allocate and move in your time that you have? Because here's this weird, crazy thing. Because you'll watch people that you just go, I don't know how they do it. They're succeeding and it's amazing and they are just doing things that I don't understand. I don't have the time to do that. And you say, I just wish I had more time. It's this weird thing. They have the same amount of time you and I do. Like they don't have, Doc Brown did not make them a DeLorean that could go forward and backward into the future and into the past. They are not pausing time. They don't have any sorts of thing. They have not gone and got the Infinity Gauntlet and turned things around. All the Marvel people know what's happening. All the rest of you are clueless. It's okay. We'll pray for you. And so they don't have those at their disposal. You and I have the same amount of time. And as we worship and as we work, and we look at our week, the time that all of us are allotted, how are we spending it? Now, for most people, here's what happens. Is they would say, and I've said this too in my life, and so I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, I'm along with you. You say, you know what, I will work really hard. Everything that I do, I'm going to work at it, and I'm going to give it my best. And you know what, I'm going to devote a lot of time to things that I find important, things that I really want to make sure that I get them right. But you know what, Jason, this worship thing, like, I just don't know. It feels like you're kind of putting me into a corner, that you're kind of pigeonholing me. It's this cookie cutter thing that has to happen, and then the standard. Like, I feel like I could be my own individual. I feel like I can do things a little different. I'll work hard, and I'll give my week and my time, but this worship thing, I'm just not sure that that's for me. And you see, it's interesting because I believe that there is a standard. And I did not plan this, but when I got this table shipped to me, the brand on it is indeed standard. And so like I saw that, I was like, that's great. Because if you go to work, you're expected to show up on time, right? Because if you don't show up on time long enough, you're going to get fired. Yeah, that's the way jobs work. It's weird. There is a standard by which you do that. If you are in a relationship, you are expected to do what you say. You're expected to meet some sort of level of expectation that's happening there. If you're in a friendship, you're supposed to be there in the good times, you're supposed to be there in the bad times and everything in between, but you're expected to be a good friend. There's a standard. There's expectations. And somehow along the way, we feel like individualism will somehow get us where we want to be. And I get it. You are made unique by God. You are only you. For some of us, we are really glad that you're the only one. Like, you are made unique. You're made individual. But it's interesting that people want to fight for individuality and yet end up all the same. It's like we're going to be, when I grew up, it was all like skateboarding and like punk rock, and we're just going to fight the system, all this stuff, and we were all going to be different, and we were all different together, exactly the same. We all wore the same stuff, we all listened to the same music, we all looked the same way. I've been dressing exactly the same since middle school, and it's come through very different layers. Like back then, it was like you're alternative, you're whatever, and you threw a flannel on, you were grunge, but it was basically the same. And then it kind of came through things, and then it went to like emo, and then now it's like hipster. I'm like, I've been the same since middle school, I don't understand. But it goes by different names, but it's the same. It's somehow individuality has trumped being able to go by a standard by which life can then spring up. I'm not saying you lose individuality. I'm saying that go by a standard that can build you the best foundation possible. And I love the way that Matthew Kelly puts it in his work-life book called Off Balance. He said, we are much more interested in developing self-expression than we are in developing selves that are worth expressing. Personal preference has triumphed over the pursuit of excellence. I'm not saying don't be unique. I love that our church is made up of various individuals from all sorts of different backgrounds and socioeconomic points of life. But at some point, there has to be a standard by which we love and care and put a foundation for our lives. And part of that, not only worship and work, but is that week, how we spend our time. And the writers of the Bible wrote out many different ways of expressing this standard of saying, what is it about our time that we value and put energy into? If you have a Bible, we'll be over in Proverbs chapter 16, but we're going to cover a few different passages. If you're not familiar with your Bible, you can look in the table of contents and find that in the Old Testament of the Bible, Proverbs 16. Or you can also, if you don't have a Bible, pick one up for free after services today. And you guys that are online, or if you're more digitally inclined, you could go to our forefrontchurch.info and swipe over a couple times till you get to the notes section. It'll have everything there. And as we look at this idea of time, James, who is the half-brother of Jesus, talked about time and how honestly we kind of, if you're OCD and you're a planner, I'm not going to make you raise your hand. You probably already were too busy with sticky notes and notes going on right now to raise your hand. That he goes, wait a second, is there a chance that we could maybe miss the point of how we move when it comes to time? And this is what he had to say. He says, now listen. You who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes. What he's saying is like time that we have here in this existence is very short. Now, when you're young, especially when you're in middle school, high school, even early, like college age, you feel like you got the world ahead of you. And to a certain degree, I get it. But talk to someone who is, and let me choose my words wisely, more seasoned in life, older. And so, if you talk to someone that's a little bit older, they will tell you, oh, it feels like just, what? Yesterday. Time goes by so fast. And the older I get, the more before I was like, no, they don't get it. And now as I watch, and I feel like we just brought home our firstborn, and now she's going to be going to middle school. Pray for us. Go, wow, there's something to be said for this plan. Now, it's not saying don't plan ahead, it's saying remember who is in control. He said, instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, if it is in God's direction, we will live and do this or that. Now, don't confine yourself to Lord's will, because I hear people say, I gotta move to Uruguay and help teach people, and that's the only thing I can do for Jesus. And I go, really? Because that's not true. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, God has, when we kind of as Christians do this, and so if you're not a Christian this morning, I'm so thankful you're here. We always have people who are, just still searching, and people are close to him. But here's what Christians do oftentimes. They find something they really want to do, and they go, it's got to be God's will. I go, really? I got to do this job because I hate my job. Job's the worst. I go, okay. They go, God wants me to pack up all my stuff and move to this little itty bitty town in Russia. I was like, do you know Russian? No, but he'll figure it out. Like, I'm going to do all this stuff. I go, could it be, I was like, why do you hate your job? Well, there's people there that I don't really like. Could it be that God's will is actually for you to stay there and love the people that you don't like, and maybe in the process he'll change your heart, because you shouldn't really not like them. You should love them. And so maybe you need to stay there and work in that and be somebody who brings them joy and shows them Jesus. And they go, I don't know if I want to talk to you anymore. You see, as we look at this, as we move in what God's will is, God's will, interestingly enough, for most people, is what they already want, because we somehow made God in our own image. And I just want to encourage you that maybe just when it comes to your time, that God has something so much more in store for you, and it's surrendering that and trusting in that and listening to that, saying, God, I think you may have more in store than I even believe in myself. The writer in Psalms says it this way: teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of what? Wisdom. I'm not saying everyone who is older is wise, but I will say that people that understand that time is very fleeting have a much better understanding of what it means to spend their time. A friend of mine, he was a pastor for a number of years, and then decided he wanted to go and just help leaders and write. And he made this commitment. He loved sports. But he said, you know what? When one of my favorite teams comes on, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to bring up the channel, and then I'm going to turn it off. And instead of spending that time watching the TV, I'm going to write. Now, for some of you, the anxiety level is huge. You're like, you mean you don't watch your team? You're not even really a fan. You know, you're just thinking through all that. And for him, he just decided, you know what? I want to spend my time on what matters. And I've always had this dream to be able to do this. And so what did he do? He sat down, and all the time that he would have spent during the year watching all his favorite teams, he spent writing. Well, he wrote 3 books that help challenge and encourage leaders, and just finished up his 4th book that's a children's book. He never thought he would even go down that road. All because he decided to look at time differently. And maybe for you, the question is, what could I do if I changed the way that I view my time and built a foundation that was on God and not about me? The writer over in Proverbs 16, where you've been holding there, says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. All of my OCD and planning friends, I want you to know that my wife and I are with you. You want to plan out all the things. You need to have all the security in the world. You need to make sure that when you are 105 and they figured out how to cryo-freeze people and you're going to live to your 1 billion or whatever, you've figured out all the steps. When you plan a trip, you plan every mile of the trip. You want it all together. When you think about your job, you've planned out. You have all Post-it notes and lists are like breathing and drinking water for you. I understand. I get it. But as this writer shares, you can plan all you want. God is the one that truly has the plan for your life. And you can plan everything that you want to, and that's absolutely amazing. But how do you surrender this into a place where He is the one that builds your foundation? You see, part of growing in maturity, in being an adult, and it requires us to recognize that, well, we cannot have it all. But the American dream tells us something different. I love the United States. I love being here. Don't get me wrong. Don't get up there, you hate America and all this stuff. Don't send me those emails because I'll just delete them. I want you to know that as you follow God, you can't have everything. There are going to be points where you don't get what you want. There are going to be points where you have to concede that things will not be the way that you had hoped. It's kind of like this 3-legged table here. You see, as we build this foundation, we look at these pieces, we have goals that we want to have. For some of you, you have a goal when it comes to a job. You say, you know what, I want to have an amazing job, and that is not a bad goal. That's a great goal to have. That I want to do something, maybe for you it's to give purpose. Maybe for you, you want to have financial stability. Whatever the case may be, that's fine. And God goes, all right, you have the free will to be able to move in that and have that job. And we have these other goals. We say, you know what, for some of us, we want to have, and maybe this is the block of family and friends, that you want to foster relationships with your current family, that you know, you want to maybe extend your family out. You want to be able to maybe get married one day, maybe have kids, all these pieces, whatever the structure is, you want to have solid relationships and friendships with people. God goes, that's great. That is absolutely awesome. Go ahead and chase after that. And so you have this kind of work endeavor and all these pieces. You go friends, and you have family. And then you go, man, I just want to do something that matters. And I want to be engaged with things. God goes, that's great. And then you start building it up even more. You just go, man, I want to go out there and see what's out there for me. You know, in the words of the movie Up, adventure is out there. You know, you want to go and explore things. See, God, I have this free will choice of all these things, and I want to see them. And God goes, that's great. But here's what happens. Is people go, God, I want to build this up, and I'm going to have all the work that's invested in this to really get this going. And I want to give it the time that it deserves because I want to make sure I succeed in it. But we keep coming back to that individuality of, God, I don't want to be a cookie cutter. God, I don't want to move in the standard that you've provided for me. I think I know better. I know I want to worship you, but I want to worship you in my own way because I don't want to see, there's people that tell me that I need to be engaged in a church. I need to be in a small group. I need to have other people around me speaking into my life and all these things. God, I hear you, but I think I know better. And so we want to choose 2 out of the 3. And if you only choose 2 out of the 3, a foundational level, a 2-legged table will what? It will what? It'll fall. Yeah. And what happens is all that stuff goes tumbling. And here's what takes place. Is we see all that stuff fall. And we go, you know what, God? I'm really angry with you. And I want you to know I've been there. That I've shook my fist at the sky in my quiet time away from everyone else. And I built these things up and I put them here and go, God, I want it to happen and I don't understand why you took this away from me. And God goes, well, I don't understand why you didn't build a foundation that was secure with me as your focus. And if you don't get anything else, my prayer is that you and I leave with this, that passion for life begins to get cultivated and emerge from finding clarity surrounding your purpose. That your purpose is not in the things that you build up on the foundation, but your purpose is given to you and I by the one who built the foundation to begin with, the one that gives us a baseline for all of life. And the way that we gain and move in satisfaction comes from living that out, from actually moving in what God calls us to be. Maybe we could put this more plainly. Passion for purpose leads to satisfaction in Jesus. But we get confused. And this is where we get confused, and this is where it's difficult. And I say we because I'm right there with you. You see, we build up these things, and we start, we go, man, this is good. Every one of us, and nothing is innately bad or wrong in any of those. And as we build these up, we begin to find pleasure in those things. We find pleasure in our job. If you find something that you love, you're going to find pleasure in it. And as you connect with family and friends, and as you begin to grow in who you are and experience new things, you're going to see all these, and it's going to feel good. But here is where the problem lies. The moment that one of those things falls, say you get hurt in your job and you can no longer do it. Say something tumultuous happens in your marriage and you lose your spouse. Maybe it's sickness, maybe it's adultery, maybe something happens. Maybe you lose a child unexpectedly or a friend. And all these things begin to fall. You see, the pleasure that thing once brought goes away because it's no longer there. And there's a keen difference between pleasure and satisfaction. There's a satisfaction that happens with God on a foundational level that surpasses all of the pleasures, that the moment that something would exit, that we still can hold firm. Matthew Kelly would say it this way: the fundamental difference between pleasure and satisfaction is that pleasure cannot be sustained beyond the activity producing it. You see, I think that we've gotten it twisted that our purpose in life comes from the things, but then when the things fall, the pleasure falls with it because we didn't surround ourselves and sustain ourselves with the foundation that's here, creating a baseline in God, knowing that satisfaction happens here no matter if things come and go. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be sad when things fall apart or when things don't go the way you planned. But when we have a satisfaction in God that's based on that, we have a clarity that goes, you know what, this fell, but I'm not going to be, because I didn't get my way and something went south, I'm not going to turn into a petulant child and throw a fit. Instead, God, I'm going to know that I'm satisfied in you. And yeah, that hurts. That's not the way that I wanted it to be. But you've built my foundation. And whatever falls off, I know that my life will stand firm because of how you designed me. And there's a few things that happens when we get that clarity. Here's the first one. Clarity of purpose relieves stress and anxiety of false expectations. The way that I see this played out most, and I'm not picking on dads, I'm not picking on moms or whatever else, but I see this play out a lot with women that have children. And it's most visual. I see it play out with guys and their purpose and everything, but especially with moms that, they're taking care of kids and all of that. There is so much pressure. And I watch all of these mommy blogs. If you write a mommy blog, again, don't email me. I watch these things, and I watch a 22-year-old who knows everything that there is to know about being a mom. Dear 22-year-old, stop. Because you don't. And I watch this happen, but here's the culture that's taken place. And I know it's always felt this way. I've heard this from women, but it's grown so much that I just have to measure up. They did a birthday party where they invited in Christian Bale himself to show up as Batman. And so now I got to raise Heath Ledger from the dead so I can get him to show up at my party because my kid loves the Joker. And there is so much pressure to be able to move and be somebody because they set a bar. And oh man, if I don't hit the bar, then I'm a failure. I want to let you know that when you get clarity of your purpose and all this foundationally is hit, you will not feel the pressure or the need to measure up to anybody else's standard but God's alone. And you will not, and I meet men that go through this same pattern of behavior. They watch a guy who exceeds in it, excels in his job, does all the right things, and they look at theirs. They've been doing the same thing for years, and they don't make it. I watch this play out really well when it comes to the Chiefs exam. I watch guys who, they move up in rank, do their thing, and other guys who don't move up as quickly, and they look at other guys and they're like, oh, why can't I do that? And they feel like they're a failure because they can't make it in, where their other peers are in the military. I want you to know that your clarity in this will relieve that anxiety of measuring up to a pressure that you don't need to measure up to. You are made in the image of God. He loves you. Don't think you need to meet up to anybody else's standards but His. And when you have clarity in your purpose, you don't care. Susan down the street, she built a full-fledged 10-foot tall sandcastle for a kid because he loves sand. And you just go, cool. I fed my kid Cheetos for lunch. And I'm totally good with that. Because I know whose I am, and I don't need to move to anybody else's standard. Here's the other piece. Clarity of purpose inspires others to join the journey. Here's the question that I want you to ask yourself. Don't answer it out loud. I want you to think about it this week. Who wants to follow Jesus because they see Jesus lived out in you? Who wants to follow Jesus because they see Jesus being lived out in you? Because if you're really living out your purpose and you understand this and you have this baseline that you're building it on, it might not look like the person down the street, but people are going to gravitate towards you because there's something different about your life. And it's not because you're wearing a big I love Jesus shirt and wearing the bracelets and you got all your those little stick figure kids on the back of your car and they're all praying and you're going to let people know that's how you love Jesus. No, that people see your life and they go, man, there's something different about you. I want to follow that. What is it? And you go, man, there's this guy named Jesus who changed us. Why don't you come on and check it out? And people will want to follow you. They'll be inspired to do that. And third, clarity of purpose leaves an impact far after you're gone. I want you to know this when it comes to your purpose. Because we're in a culture that wants to build platforms. Hey, everybody, look at me. I'm watching my kids do this, and I'm terrified of it. They're looking at these kids that are 8, 10, 13 years old that have YouTube channels with millions of viewers, and they're looking at it, they're going, I want to start a YouTube channel. I'm like, no. They're like, you don't love me. I'm like, I do, but no. Because here's my fear for them. I want to mold them in such a way that they see that there's an impact in their purpose far after they're gone that doesn't point a finger at them. And we live within a culture that's all about building platforms and connections. And if we're not careful, we'll want to leave a legacy that points to our name instead of God's. And no matter how high you build this up on this foundation, everything needs to point back to the one that built it in the first place. And if you're not known for that, then there's a chance that you've missed one of these and it's going to topple. Because you see, passion for purpose leads to satisfaction in Jesus. And I want you to know that when you live a life satisfied in your purpose, nobody can lead you to the left or the right because you know exactly what direction you're going. And this, no matter what storms may come, will stand firm. Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you and we'll see you then.